How's it going, everybody, and welcome to episode 304 of Master My Garden podcast. Now, this week's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by a previous guest of the podcast, and I had a look today to see when I last had Mattie from Future Forests on, and it was a long, long, long way back, December 2020, and it was episode 46, so just in the very, very early days of the podcast. So Future Forests is a nursery and garden centre in near Bantry in West Cork. Uh, and it's one that is loved by Irish gardeners, I suppose, on a number of fronts, has great selection, but always backed up by supreme advice, I suppose, and unusual stuff and your normal everyday stuff. One of their biggest periods, as I mentioned last week, is Bareroot planting, and we're getting into that season now. So I said I'd bring Mattie back on, and we're going to chat all things Bareroot, and we're going to go wherever the conversation goes around different plants and categories, and see what has changed around trends maybe since we spoke a couple of years ago. I hadn't realised it was that length ago, but Mattie, you're very, very welcome back to Master My Garden podcast.
John, thank you. I'm actually shocked as well to imagine that was 5 years ago.
Yeah,
It's
crazy. Yeah,
it's
it
hard to
doesn't seem
believe.
like it actually.
It really doesn't seem like it, but I
Yeah.
think I think that's what kind of happens, isn't it?
Yeah, I know there
So
was a few bizarre years in between and whatnot, but yeah, it doesn't really feel like that long ago since we were having that conversation. But yeah, shocked today to see it was episode 46 and it was December 2020.
wow,
Yeah,
wow, yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm sure lots has changed and not much has changed, but just to as I said, Future Forest is kind of loved by Irish gardeners. And I know you in that last episode a couple of years ago, you mentioned the sort of origin story of it, so we mightn't go into that too much. But one of the things you're synonymous with is, I suppose, your advice, your range of plants, and even within a particular plant, you'll have different sizes, which
Yeah.
which people seem to like. So just give us a kind of a brief overview of Future Forest as it is today, I suppose.
Well, I suppose I thank you for mentioning the advice part. I think it's something that I always try and drill into the team, especially what I would call the front of house team or anyone in the office, is that always you're always trying to give the best advice because above everything, whatever you sell to people, you want it to grow for them, you
Hmm.
know? So like if someone says to me, they're like, oh, geez, we want 500 beech. And our first question would be, look, what's the soil like? You know,
Yeah.
rather than going, we have the plants, you can have them. But just checking, just asking people what's their situation. Are they coastal? What's growing around them? So if we can get the good info from the customers who are trying to buy from us, then the plants we sell to them should do well for them. And
Yeah.
then all around that's a success story.
Yeah.
But we do sell, and I'd say maybe other places do as well. But particularly the hedging and the native trees, we would do in different sizes. So everything from 40 60s, which would be 1 to 2 foot in the old money, 60 90s, 91 20s, 120 150s, 4 to 5 foot is kind of the highest we would go on what we would call hedging or whips.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we would do that on the main guys, as I said, the hedging and certainly the trees as well. You wouldn't always have every grade, but it gives people the opportunity. People who are maybe on a budget or have time
Hmm.
can plant the 1 to 2 foots. They're not going to cost half as much. Give them a few years, they'll have caught up. Generally, I feel people who are planting 4 to 5 foots or 150s need something a bit more instant, you
Yeah.
know. But quite often, if it's an exposed area, they might need a stake or something to go with that as well.
Yeah. Interesting you say that actually, because I was driving through Carlow Town the other evening, and there's, how would you put it? It's nice planting, but it's certainly unusual. I'm not quite sure exactly what they're trying to capture. So it basically takes in a lead up to a roundabout and a sort of a between two curbs in the center of the road. There's a little bit of planting leads into a big roundabout. They've created some kind of a like mounds on it. I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to capture there. And then it leads out to another sort of short dual carriageway, I guess. And right in the center of that is a huge amount of planting, and they've gone for huge, maybe 8 foot tall Taxus bacatas. And I passed the other evening, and every one of them were blown over sideways, which was, as I say, it's a strange looking planting anyway. Lovely plants
Yeah,
gone into it, but I'm not exactly sure of the concept or the design that they're trying to show. But it was a
yeah,
pity to see these. Now I'm sure they get staked and fixed up, but
yeah.
just
It might be one of those designs that has to settle in for a year or two, maybe
yeah,
before it becomes apparent.
yeah, it looks like something. It looks like they're trying to. It, what does it look? It looks a little bit like a rolling mountain in the middle of this
Right.
roundabout.
Yeah,
They've put some kind of gorse plants into it and stuff like that. So I'm not exactly
yeah.
sure what
What
the
they're at.
and then when you come out the other side, it's the Taxus baccata and some nice underplanting, all nice plants. But it just
Yeah.
the whole concept I'm not quite getting yet.
It's lost on you at the moment,
It's
anyway.
lost on me at the minute anyway. But no, just when you're saying about the staking, so obviously instant hedging is it suits certain people and it's necessary in certain places, but
Yeah.
definitely they will need staking because
Yeah, I think if you've got shelter and you've got the budget, you
yeah,
know, you can
yeah,
get away with planting bigger stuff. But
hmm
like I would say, I'll just pick out maybe beech or hornbeam, which would be two non-natives, but hedging that we would sell quite a bit of. And of all the grades, the 6090s would far outstrip any of the other grades in
yeah,
terms of what we sell.
yeah,
And I think 4060s people are like, maybe it's a bit too small. And the other ones, again, you're getting into that territory of maybe a bit too big, might need support. So 6090 seems to be the most popular for
yeah.
that type of hedging anyway.
Yeah, and definitely, and like from the point of view of looking ahead to next April, May, if you look back to April, May this year where it was so dry for that period of time, like big stuff is gonna like everything is gonna need minding in that first year. But
Yeah,
if you've big plants with, huge top growth, small root balls or root zones underneath, it's gonna need a lot of minding and watering, particularly if we do get, that dry snap, which we typically do in one or two of the months between sort of April and up into July.
yeah. Well, you've absolutely nailed it. There's an absolute definite pattern of dry spell. I'm going to say in the last 10 years, it's getting fairly consistent.
hmm
Usually around April or May, when the Bareroot plants really need that watering, or even potted plants, any
Yeah.
plants really.
Any plant, yeah.
But I often think of young Bareroot plants that are really, the roots are just going out. They need that moisture. They need that bit of care. And there's still a little bit of that feeling. Sure, it's Ireland. Once you stick it in the ground, it's grand, you
hmm
know.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something we're well aware of. We're getting those dry spells. Like even here, just in the nursery, we've just invested in tables. I can't even remember the proper name for them, but they're like water tables, really.
Yeah.
So that's really for the potted plants. But we are spending so much people hours on watering.
hmm
Now our site, if for anyone who comes down to us, they'll know we're at the side of a hill
Yeah.
in West Cork. Place was nearly grown out of a bog, really. But it's there's just levels everywhere. It's not the place where you could just set up a big sprinkler system and walk away from it.
Yeah.
So we have to do a lot of, I'm going to call it hand watering, even though we've got really good pressure and really good hoses and lances and all that sort of stuff. But it does take a long time, especially when you get those dry spells.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've just invested in these tables, so quite an investment for us, and we were only just starting to put them out. So I'm hoping that will really start to pay dividends um, when we get those dry spells.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so to get back to the plants, I suppose there's a few things I want to kind of talk about. So obviously Bareroot season has kicked off, really helped by the good cold snap last week that has sort of turned plants back into dormancy, and now
yeah.
lifting is starting in earnest. Tell us about what you're doing in Bareroot. Obviously, you have all the usual, you mentioned some of the hedging there and that, but sort of run through the categories, run through, what's popular. And what I want to kind of come around to at some point is what has changed in the last 5 years in terms of, people's choices or even reliability of certain things. For example, I covered an episode answering a listener's question a couple of weeks ago, and it was on hedging. And Portuguese laurel was one that I spoke about, and it's one that I've liked over the last number of years, mentioned it a good few times, and now I'm seeing some vulnerability coming into that plant, disease, mildew particularly over the last few years. And yeah, just to talk about those type things. So
Yeah.
let's chat
Yeah.
about your sort of stalwarts first and what you're doing in Bareroot. I know you do everything from hedging to trees to fruit bushes, fruit trees, and so on.
Like we do carry a big range. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
And the online side of it is very important to us. And we're very rural. We're a long way away from any real big urban areas. So having a strong online presence means it actually also gives us the opportunity to get that range in, because I think having the range makes more people come to us.
yeah,
Because as you say, someone could say, "Look, I want 100 hawthorn for a native hedge. I want a mixed native hedge, or I want to plant an orchard. I want to plant nut trees, willows." I mean, we do a big range. I suppose in terms of what's changed, even 5 years ago, it would have been becoming big for us. But now fruit is a massive part of our business.
right,
So bare root fruit trees, apples, pears, damsons, plums, gauges, small bit of cherries, but mainly apples. We sell an awful amount of apples,
right.
and we'd have quite a big heritage range as well. We've always had the heritage range, especially since the Seed Savers started them up in Clare.
Yeah,
They really got them going, but another grower developed them for us as well. So we've always been offering maybe 30 varieties of heritage apples,
yeah.
as well as all the regulars and the usual ones. So fruit has become massive for us, and
Mm,
I've even seen a pattern where I feel that web sales even slow down when our fruit range gets lower.
right,
So I think people would go, yeah, we'd like to get some fruit, and we'll get X and Y while we're at it.
right. Yeah.
Um,
So the
I
fruit is the
suppose
driver then.
I think it's a bit of a driver, yeah.
Mm,
I mean, compared to what we were selling 10 years ago, there's no comparison. There
yeah,
really is no comparison. Um, and I mean, on other levels, you mentioned Portuguese laurel. I love Portuguese laurel. I think it's a
yeah. I love it.
fantastic
Mm,
hedging plant. We've actually stopped selling common laurel. So
yeah,
we were getting a lot of feedback from people about being invasive and being hard to control. And so we were listening to a lot of that. I'm not a big fan of common laurel anyway.
hmm,
So we took a decision there about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, to stop selling it.
hmm.
So we've stopped selling that, and we're now selling, I suppose, more Portuguese laurel. But I was a bit worried to hear what you were saying. I wouldn't say I've seen those issues myself yet, you
Yeah,
know, but
yeah. It's funny because it would have been like if 3 or 4 years ago, it was the hedge that I was saying was it had everything, in terms, well, everything except for maybe the biodiversity element of it, but it had the lovely green leaf, the nice color, the evergreen, quick growing, hardy. It had everything, ticked every box, and
easy to
only
manage,
yeah, easy to manage, not a heavy thing to cut. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a great hedge, and still is. And I've
yeah,
just slightly put a caveat beside it myself over the last year or two, and it's not all over the country. I know that for certain because listeners are
okay.
messaging in afterwards. But in the Midlands, there is definitely an issue, and it seems to be building around mildew. And generally speaking, they'll grow out of it, but they can look a
Okay.
little bit. They lose their nice, vibrant look for a little while when it's happening.
While it's
Um,
happening.
yeah,
Okay.
and I know for sure it's in the Midlands because I've seen it in lots of different hedges, and I've heard some nurseries talking about it in the sort of Midlands area. Uh,
Okay. Well, that's news to me. And what usually happens is, as soon as you hear it, I'll probably get a phone call from a customer now tomorrow going, "Oh, what's up with my Portuguese laurel?"
yeah,
As these things usually happen. But look, you have to keep an eye on everything like that, don't you?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you really got to watch what's working for people, what's not working for people, what's fair to sell to people. I mean, I remember years ago when I was getting contacted by customers about Escalonia,
Yeah.
And I was even went out to visit a couple of customers, and I was like, did you spray near it? Or I'm not sure what's going on. And then, of course, you start to hear in dribs and drabs that of problems with it, And of course, Escalonia was one of those wonder hedges,
Yeah.
It would grow from cuttings, beautiful flower, good by the sea. And I suppose we haven't sold that now, I'd say, in 15 years or something.
You haven't sold it at all in that
At
winter?
all. We've stopped selling it, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that the issue with that was fire blight, wasn't it?
It's not fire blight. It's not fire blight. No, it's just some other kind of a disease. It gets a black spot and it starts to denude completely in the winter, and then can die off as well. So some people would have hedges that would come back in the summer, but it's that thing again of wanting to sell people something that we know is going to work for them.
Robust.
Yeah.
And funny enough, in this area. Now, mostly because we're inland, and Escalonia, generally speaking, would be hugging the coast a little bit more than where we are. In this area, any of the Escalonia hedges that I know of are impeccable at the moment. So, so maybe it's just, if the pressure and the amount of them in an area build up, like Portuguese laurel is everywhere around here, and is it because the pressure is building? A lot of people have it, and then maybe. Because there's a lot of it, does it build up?
It could be.
Possibly.
Could be.
But to be honest, even though I've said there's a caveat beside it, Portuguese laurel is still on my list as one, and was on the list a couple of weeks ago as one of the best hedges you can plant. So I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I remember for sure that mixed hedges, mixed fruiting hedges, mixed biodiversity hedges were gaining in popularity. That has only continued upwards, I'm sure, since. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's still very popular. We do what we call a mixed wildlife fruiting hedge, and it would be all native species, 60% hawthorn, and then 40% mix of other natives like hazel, guelder rose, spindle. Holly is usually potted, so people have to buy that separately if they want to put it in. But maybe dog rose, prunus padus, stuff like that. So I would say that's our most popular mixed hedge by a mile. We do also offer what we call a permaculture hedge. And I think I said that to you the last day as well. And that's more everything in it. It's not, well, we do put some natives in it. We like putting elder in it because we love elder so much. But it's everything in the hedge has a berry that you can either make is either edible or you can use it in some source. So be it, making jam or making something like that. So it would be aronia would be a big one in it. Amelancher, Lamarckii would be another one in it. Elder. We'd always put some hazel into it. Autumn olive, Elaeagnus umbellata as well would be another one going into it. So varieties like that, they both prove very popular. Now I haven't made them available yet because, as you say, it's all starting. We're gone from a few weeks ago, as I was saying, like, how am I going to keep everyone busy? To now kind of going, oh my God, how are we going to manage everything? But as you say, the stock is being lifted. It's coming to me every week. We've big deliveries landing this week now. So after this week, we'll be able to make available some of those mixed hedges.
Okay. Interested to hear, because I know you mentioned fruit trees the last time we spoke a couple of years ago, and fruit trees were popular, but I don't think you didn't talk about them as being, a huge category for you at the time. They were there and you were doing them and so on. But there obviously has been growth there and a change there. I suppose two questions. What do you think is driving that, number one? And also within that, you mentioned you had 30-ish heritage varieties and all the usual favorites. Maybe just talk about some of the, when it comes to apples, talk about some of the real robust stalwarts that you have within the range.
Yeah, so my favorite apple, and I think probably one of the most reliable apples, and you probably know it yourself, is Katie.
Yeah, good one, yeah.
Or Katja, which is its proper name, Eastern European apple. That is, it just hands down, it's so easy to grow. It's got massive disease resistance and just works really well. From from, I'm going to say, the heritage apples, one of my favorites is one called Loch Tree of Wexford. And a lot of the heritage apples are they're smaller apples, but this one is it's an eater, but it's quite crisp
Right.
and sweet. And I'm a big fan of that one as well.
Yeah.
In terms of plums, the old reliables are still the most popular. So Victoria plum probably outstrips most of them.
Yeah.
Jubilee, which would be kind of regarded as an improved Victoria,
Right.
is also quite a good one. But it's just funny and habits. People know the name of Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
So they would always go for that. In pears, it's the top three would definitely be Conference, Concord, and Beth. And
Okay.
I like when I have all three of them because, as it was John McNamara from McNamara Fruit Nurseries told me years ago, that they were the three best pears for growing in an Irish environment.
Yeah.
And I would go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Conference and Concord are technically self-fertile, those pears are definitely better if they have a pollinating partner. And Conference and Concord will not pollinate each other. So if you have Beth in the mix, that will pollinate both of them.
Right.
So,
I hadn't come across Bet. I know the other two, and I have Conference in the garden, but yeah, Bet is a new one for me.
that is a new one because some people will go on and they'll order Concord and Conference, and you're not going to get fruit every year,
Yeah.
because they're self-fertile, but not fully self-fertile. So if you had a Beth in the mix there, it will pollinate both of them back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what do you think is driving the fruit growth?
I don't know. I mean, dare I say that just I feel we've put a lot of work into the website.
Mm-hmm.
We've put a lot of work into descriptions and getting fair descriptions about fruit. So, like, if there's an issue with a plant, we'll say it. So, is it prone, like Cox's orange pippin? Famous apple, but very
Beautiful.
disease prone.
Yeah.
But we say that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as long as people are informed, and I think when you've got good information on the website, I think people have confidence. I'm also, of course, now that I'm thinking about it, I think actually one of the bigger factors is COVID. So during COVID, we had an absolute, as did nearly every garden centre, we had an absolute explosion in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were allowed to do online was absolutely massive for us,
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people who had never ordered plants online before suddenly were getting plants online and going, do you know what? They do turn up okay.
Yeah.
They don't get destroyed in transit.
Mm-hmm.
I planted them out. They're growing. They're producing. So I think COVID gave a lot of certainly Irish customers confidence that you could buy online as well. So I think, I could be wrong, but I think that would be a big factor over the last few years.
Yeah, but I think there is natural growth in fruit at the moment for some reason. People definitely, like most people now, seem to want to have or are trying to have some sort of edible plants in the garden, and
Yeah.
there's definitely a push in that direction. You mentioned Cox's orange pippin. I grew Cox's red pippin,
All right.
and it's the first time this year that I had fruit on it. It's only planted 2 or 3 years, not long. But it was, I would say it was the nicest apple I've ever eaten. There was only a few on it, but it definitely is a gorgeous apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, Cox is so famous for being tasty, like
yeah,
unbelievably tasty.
yeah,
So if you can get good results from a Cox, or I presume that one's a Cox Sport,
yeah,
and then if you're going to get tasty apples,
yeah.
it's trying to keep the tree healthy
That's the thing.
without, like we don't spray down here or anything like that. We don't use any chemicals ourselves. So trying to give, as I said, varieties that are fairly robust, or if they're not, at least people know on the description on the website that you could have challenges.
Yeah. Just to sort of go away from fruit now, and I know there is other edible plants that you're doing as well, Bareroot. Maybe just mention a couple of those, and then we'll start
Well,
chatting.
yeah, we do the regulars, what we would call soft fruit, so all your currants, your red currants, your white currants, your black currants, Raspberries. We do raspberries, Bareroot raspberries in bundles. We would do asparagus. We would do rhubarb. In terms of top fruit as well, I didn't mention, we would do medlars. Actually, quince this year, my whole first batch of quince have nearly sold out. Wow. And even we're questioning why that has happened, because other years you're kind of getting to March hoping the last of them will go, like, you know.
Yeah.
And already the first batch is nearly gone, which is very surprising.
I've seen a good bit of talk lately on quince.
Okay.
In relation to cooking, particularly.
Okay. So maybe that's it. Maybe there's been TV programs or something, but we were talking about it only 2 hours ago. We were like, the quince stock is nearly gone, which is unusual for the start of the year.
Yeah, for this stage, yeah.
Yeah. But we would have other, we'd also sell, types of aronias, loganberries, blueberries. We sell a lot of blueberries as well. Other soft fruit as well. I mentioned plums and stuff on the top fruit, but damsons, of course, are a type of plum.
Yeah.
But they're always popular, and I can never seem to quite have enough of them. And I think people planting a damson, it just kind of takes you back to maybe something that might be growing in the ditch, but that's edible, So
I think they're a little bit underrated as well, actually.
They're totally underrated. And if you've got a garden where you're like, the conditions are a little bit challenging, and I would always say that kind of damsons are probably the easiest to grow. Your common plums are probably after that, and then your gauges and your stuff would be, they'd be needing a much better site,
Yeah. The only thing about the damson is that it grows quite big, doesn't it?
These are all grafted onto rootstock,
Or
they're all on St. Julian A,
Okay.
So they're named varieties of damsons,
Okay, so they're going to stay relatively small then.
They're going to stay, yeah. Nearly all our plums are on St. Julian A.
Okay, and that's going to go to what size then, roughly?
Oh, I'm going to, off the top of my head, 12 to 14 foot with pruning.
Yeah. So because but damsons are super hardy, and they're underrated from a taste perspective. So a nice damson will taste as nice as any plum, really, to be honest with you. So they're just seen as a little bit
catching it at the right time, But like, look, if people are into making jams or preserves or anything like that as well, then damsons are ideal.
Yeah, for sure. To move away from fruit, as I said, we'll kind of come towards hedging in a minute. But trees wise, what have you got in trees? And obviously, native is still hugely popular, but you do a lot of other sort of unusual types as well. So maybe sort of run through some of those.
God, off the top of my head now to think, it's funny how I gave a garden talk there recently, and when you're handling trees all the time, what you think is kind of what you're used to, you don't realize that other people think is maybe a bit unusual,
Yeah.
So you might catch me there to try and think of what I've got that's a bit unusual. I've got Caucasian wingnut this year, Terricaria fraxinifolia.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of that tree. We have one growing up the back, and it's big tree, very majestic, and beautiful. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
No, I'm not. No.
Yeah, so that's one that I've been struggling to get for a while, but have it now. I've only just sold out of Alnus spatii.
Okay.
And that is Spates alder. That was developed by a famous nurseryman in Berlin. I think back in the 20s or 30s or something like that. But it's a beautiful alder. The leaf is extra big on it, and really long catkins that hang on the tree and stay for a long time.
Yeah.
And again, we've got a few big ones out there, and it's so brilliant when people are in looking at a twig going, God, what'll this do? And you go, well, just look behind you there. Do you see that thing?
Yeah.
So I always liked that tree. Zelkova serrata.
Yeah.
A Japanese elm. Again, beautiful tree. I do question, we've one here and it's growing a long time. If you Google it, the height is supposed to be up to 60 feet.
Right.
But I've never seen one get that big. So I'm going to have to do a bit more research into that. But it grows up into quite a vase shape. So you get great shelter underneath it. We've
underneath.
got ferns underneath it and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
I planted one maybe about 12 years ago for a neighbour near his gate, and it did exactly what I hoped. It's kind of gone out over the
Over
entrance, you know.
yeah.
So that's another slightly unusual one. We'd have a range of perotias, which I wouldn't say wouldn't be incredibly unusual. Oh, Crataegus splendens. So it's an American hawthorn.
Right.
Extra big thorns. The berries are extra big on it. So it's Crataegus persimilis splendens. But it doesn't have a hawthorn leaf. So it doesn't have your regular indented like we would have for Crataegus monogyna.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more oval, but certainly not as oval as the plum-leafed hawthorn. But the autumn colour on it this year was absolutely unbelievable. It was like literally kind of shades of orange on the leaf. So I had them, and again, we have some of this stuff on the website. People don't really know it, you know?
Yeah.
But anyone who visited when they saw the autumn colour, and we had really good autumn colour this year.
Brilliant, yeah.
So that proved popular, and I'm always a big fan of Crataegus. I think our native one is probably one of my favorite trees, but then there's lots of other Crataegus out there.
Yeah.
On a note of trends, we've stopped selling Crataegus Paul Scarlet as well, because it's just one of those trees that maybe it's down here, maybe it's because we're near the coast, but it drops its leaf so early, it tends to get leaf problems, and like people dropping their leaves in June, you know.
Yeah.
And
interesting you say that now, because I had one had one up until this spring. It's planted 10 years, was growing brilliantly, was flowering brilliantly, was doing everything that I wanted it to do. And then for the last 3 years, as you said, dropping leaf early in the year, yeah, possibly as early as June. And then you have this bare tree sitting there, still alive, but with no leaf on it in June, July, and it looks terrible. And I tried, various things. I tried natural fungicides. I tried seaweed. It got the best care and attention that it possibly could, and it still did the same thing. And it was driving me nuts, so I pulled it up this spring. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, if you couldn't manage to get it to success,
Yeah.
We were finding it. I was just getting feedback from people saying, "God, it's looking terrible." And I finally had one lady who bought one as a memorial for her husband.
Right.
And I did say, look, it can be problematic, but oh, he loved that tree. And she called me a few months later, probably around July, going, "Oh, it's looking terrible." And family came over, and I was like, look, let's see, can we choose something else? And we'll sort you out. But it was after that I said, look, I've had enough of it. I don't have faith in it to be a good tree for people anymore. But they are Crataegus leviagatus, whereas all the other Crataeguses I'm talking about are different.
Yeah. I'm ducking and diving here, but I'm going to shoot back for a second. I covered an episode a couple of weeks ago on hedging as answering a listener's question. And afterwards, another listener messaged me, and rightly so. I didn't mention fuchsia in the episode. And again, it's a little bit like the Escalonia. Fuchsia hedges, there wouldn't be that many around here. We're inland. They're probably not as popular in this area, but I know in the likes of your area down there, fuchsia hedges would be very popular, I think. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, fuchsia is actually the symbol. When they were doing a big advertising campaign for West Cork X amount of years ago, fuchsia is the symbol they used for West Cork. So fuchsia is, I'm going to use the word rampant down here, especially if you go out onto the headlands and onto the coast,
Okay.
I'm still
rampant in a bad way?
I wouldn't say, look, would you say it's in a bad way because maybe is it out competing some native plants that could be there? But it's certainly by its nature likes to sucker, but look, it's not like, it's nowhere in the league of ponticum or rhododendron ponticum or any of these things where you'll see it popping up here, there, and everywhere. Yeah. I just think where you plant it, be prepared that it's going to bush out and become a thicket.
But it is a great hedge, and as I say, it's one that I omitted from the list, and it's more because I'm thinking local and I'm thinking of hedges and I watch them as I'm driving around and I see some that are doing well, but I don't really see fuchsia around here. But I know when you go towards the coast in all directions, you'll see
Yeah.
fuchsia and it's a great hedge.
Yeah, if you come to West Cork, you'll see fuchsia
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah,
everywhere. Yeah, yeah,
especially near the coast. And look, it's very popular, and yeah, we sell a lot of it every year.
yeah. To go back to the hedges, as we start to head for the end here, what what is the most popular hedge at the moment that you're seeing?
Okay, the most popular hedge every year is hawthorn. Now, obviously, there's schemes going,
Yeah,
right? So those schemes are sucking up all the hawthorn that is there fairly quickly.
yeah,
But even if the schemes aren't there per plant, hawthorn would still probably be the most popular.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's because obviously there's the mixed hedges, but we'd be catering to the farming community and stuff like that
yeah, yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah.
But outside of hawthorn, I would say the next most popular hedge is probably beech. Um, and then followed by, I mean, I'm a massive fan of hornbeam. I
Hmm.
just think it's a hedge that's made for Ireland.
Yeah.
It just it'll take heavy ground, it'll take poor soil. I have a fantastic hedge of it at home, planted in the heaviest clay. You could nearly make cups out of the clay. It's so bad,
Right.
um, but it's thriving in it.
Yeah.
So I think hornbeam is a very underrated hedge. So
Yeah.
we
Definitely
would sell,
underrated.
yeah, we would sell a good bit of hornbeam, but yeah, beech would be good. Um, yeah, I'd say we would sell a lot of hazel, and whether that's going into just individual hedgerows, I don't know. But overall, at the end of the year, when we'd start looking at what we moved a lot of, hazel would be up there as well.
Mm. And in terms of evergreen, then,
Evergreen, a few years ago, it probably would have been common laurel. Now I'm going to say Portuguese laurel, which
hmm
we were discussing. I'm also quite a fan of Japanese privet, so Ligustrum japonicum, of which we would sell a bit. I can't always get as much as I want, but that would be popular. Yew, we would sell quite a good bit of yew as well, even though
that's it's underused as well.
it's
It's
underused. You'd want good ground. I think people are a little bit of afraid of it for all the
yeah.
toxic reasons and stuff like that. But we do sell quite a bit of it.
Hmm.
Um, Cotoneaster franchetti is another. Now it's semi-evergreen,
Yeah.
so not fully evergreen, but semi-evergreen. But we would sell a fair shot of that as well. I'm probably forgetting some real basics. Gristalinia.
Christianity is a
So
great one. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like Marmite. People either hate it or like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, yeah, we would sell a good bit of Gristalinia as well, actually. So
Mm. I don't
yeah,
know
I
why.
think they're the main.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to like. You're right. It is like Marmite. People either love it or hate it. I I don't know why you wouldn't like it. The color, I like the color of it.
Yeah,
Some people might think it's maybe a little bit washy in that it's kind of a limey green as opposed to a dark green, but I think it's a nice color. It's so easy to grow, grows fast,
yeah,
really easy to cut.
yeah,
There's not much wrong with it. Like there's not many sort of
yeah,
negatives against it. So you would imagine it would be more popular.
yeah. I mean, I think people lost hedges of it in the big winters
2010.
of 2010, 11,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that was down to cutting it too late, really,
Mm,
and cutting it too tight. Because I was getting neighbours who one side of the road was fine, the other side of the road was gone.
right.
Um, but I remember after that going, well, that's the end of Gristalinia now after that freeze. And
Yeah.
sure, within a couple of years, sales were back up to what they were.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, here in my mom's house now, there was about 100 meters of mature Griselinia, and that was just killed. And it wasn't down. I know in certain areas, if it had got that hard cut and then the frost,
Yeah.
that done a job on it. But around here, we were just so cold for so long, and
Yeah.
it didn't recover. So
Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of that around here, but still. There's a lot of them back again, as you say, and they're really
Yeah.
robust. They're really
Yeah.
robust,
An
unless
old
you get.
nursery man told me, he was like, you should never prune, just don't prune Gristalinia after August. You
Right.
know, if you're going to do it, end of August, start to September, and just don't leave it too late. For that reason of, especially if you're more in the Midlands and where it can get really cold in the autumn.
Right, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
You have to watch the rules around cutting hedges, of course, but
No, no,
yeah,
exactly. That's why I drifted into
yeah,
September there. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But no, yeah, that makes sense now. Because yeah, if you got that cut at the end of August, and yeah, it got a little bit of a got to grow out a little bit before any frost potentially would come. Yeah, it
Yeah.
would make it
Yeah.
make it a lot.
I think that's the main point,
Yeah,
that it's not, you're not skinning it close
yeah,
to the frosty time.
yeah.
Yeah.
As we start to finish off here, I know you do, like we've talked about the main categories that would be falling under this Bareroot season, but you're also doing, bulbs, perennials, roses. Actually, roses is something you're doing. Are you doing Bareroot roses?
I'm doing only a small amount of Bareroot roses. I'm
Hmm.
mainly doing old old varieties, and mainly ramblers, scramblers, and climbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So you're also doing not so much at this time of the year. I know you sell them, but they're not the main focus this time of the year. But perennials and grasses and bamboos and ferns, just across those sort of categories. Anything sort of trending or different or unusual happening at the moment, and anything there?
Well, I, I would say for us online, mentioning ferns were kind of a surprise to us.
Right.
We people think getting stuff up online is easy, but writing a description, getting a good photo, all that sort of stuff, it takes time,
Yeah.
And ferns, we managed to do ferns quite well a few years ago, and we keep adding to it. But we're so surprised every year with how many ferns are selling.
Right.
So, like, it's not in a comparison to some of the other big sections, but it is surprising about how many. I just think maybe people have an interest in ferns. Maybe it's growing, but ferns are definitely moving more. Perennials, like right now outside, today was a nice hardy day, but like some days the rain's going sideways and it's all a bit. But if you come into Future Forests anytime from April, May, June on, the place is awash with perennials,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the color out of them is amazing. We've got some amazing Irish growers of perennials,
Yeah.
from
For
even
sure.
from 9 centimeters up to 2 liter, 3 liter pots.
Yeah.
So perennials have definitely been growing for us. We don't put all of them up online because they're a bit trickier to send, you know. Um, but look, the color and what they give to a garden. I would have said when I started landscaping years ago, when I was a young fella, and I was working for a great fella called Tommy Hanrahan, and when we used to do gardens, perennials were like, they were barely a thing.
Yeah.
They really were. Like, you'd get the odd one going in, and I would say now, even if I'm planting for someone or doing, advising someone, I'm always trying to get lots of perennials in.
Yeah.
It's nice to get that color.
Yeah, no, it gives you great color. You probably do, and I think, on the podcast we talk about it a lot, trying to bring a bit of balance to it, because for a few years there, I've seen beds planted and there's nothing, only perennials in it, and you do need, stuff with a bit of structure, and your
Yeah.
grasses and your flowering shrubs, and some of those
Yeah.
things got sort of left behind a little bit, but they're all a vital component of a nice border.
It's look, it's important to get a mix, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And like when anyone comes to me and they say we want to plant up the whole garden, and I'm usually like, look, always try to make room for some natives in your garden, always, if you can, even
yeah,
if it's a small hedge or a few trees, ground cover, perennials. But again, as you say, don't focus on just one thing. Try to get a broad spectrum across the garden, and then you'll have year-round interest if
yeah,
you do that.
yeah. Actually, that's something, since we last spoke, the native, non-native, that sort of debate and conversation has really ramped up over the last couple of years since we last spoke. Are you noticing that with the visitors to the nursery, or?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
So like we've always bought from Irish nurseries.
yeah.
We do import as well.
Hmm.
So they're everything. We can just feel it in demand. People are, is that Irish seed? Is it Irish provenance?
Yeah, yeah,
So on our website, if it's Irish provenance, we'll mark it as Irish provenance. In
yeah,
general, the smaller stuff, I'm going to say alder, downy, birch, oak, the kind of 60/90s, 40/60s, are generally Irish provenance. But then if people want bigger, it's usually imported stock.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But it is definitely a conversation that has ramped up since we last spoke a couple of years ago.
Oh, massively, I would say.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's not a debate we'll get into here, but there is, there's several sides to the conversation, and some people fall too much on one side or the other, and yeah, but it is a debate that's well in the public domain now over the last while.
it is. It is. Look, from my perspective, for us, it's always been about a bit of balance.
Yeah,
Like I can't always get the stock that I need when I need it to sell to people. You
yeah,
know, and as I said, we've always have promoted native and native provenance,
yeah,
and it's just about sometimes I don't have enough, so I'll have a bit of this and a
yeah,
bit of that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's all from trusted growers that we've been buying off for 20 years. The business was started in 1986 by my wife's parents, and
yeah.
we're running it now 17, 18 years, something like that. But we're turning 40 next year. So we've got a big birthday next year. So we'll
Brilliant.
be having lots of celebrations. So it's like you're saying there, they originally bought from us. I often think of the amount of trees and gardens and plants that must be around the country from those 40 years of
Yeah,
retail.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's always nice. People come in, they say, God, I bought this tiny tree off you. And it's
Mm,
now, 60 foot high kind of a thing. So it's,
yeah.
it's always nice to get the feedback.
Yeah, and there's a bit of when you're saying that, when you're asking the question about these trees and shrubs and so on over the last 40 years and where they are, and then you tie it back to your name, I suppose that is exactly what, the name is, Future Forest. So
Exactly.
yeah, something that
Exactly.
was planted that length ago is now a forest.
Is
And
now a forest. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice tie in there. That wasn't planned, but it worked out well. So as we start to close off there anyway, obviously Bareroot season is, in full swing now. Just a couple of top tips for people. I know you mentioned some of them at the start. A couple of top tips for people to be successful with Bareroot. They're generally easy, and I recommend, obviously the watering as we enter into next spring is hugely critical. Staking if it needs staking and so on. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Um, I have a thing, never let a root go in the ground dry, you know.
Hmm.
Even if you think there's 2 inches of rain coming tonight and you're trying to plant your hedge, I
Yeah,
always recommend dipping the root before planting.
yeah.
Um, I mean, that's basic advice, but I think that works. Uh, don't be afraid of it.
Hmm.
I think people sometimes think it's bare rooted. If it's sitting outside of the bag for 2 minutes, it's going to die. But they're very, very hardy.
Yeah,
So don't be afraid of it. Just handle them sensibly. If you're planting a lot, I used to always say, if you've got your main bulk there, keep a small bag with 20 or 30 in the bag. Keep a bucket of muddy water with you, dip and plant.
yeah.
I think watering it in the spring, if we do get those dry spells, as you say, is absolutely crucial.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, generally, yeah, don't be afraid of it. If it's a good size, stake it. I think staking is important. I think before people used to see it as an extra expense.
Hmm.
But particularly for fruit trees, I think the strimmers and things like that kills more fruit trees than you can imagine. So
Unbelievable.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
so a stake is a bit of a guard and a bit of a thing to stay away from it.
Yeah,
But I think the big thing is don't be afraid of it.
yeah, yeah.
Like you're gonna have to get the hands dirty, but it's good, honest, decent work.
Yeah, it's a good tip, but it's one that's overlooked a lot. You go ahead now and you buy your 200 beach or whatever it may be, and it comes in a plastic bag tied on top, locking in moisture. That's the purpose of that. You get it home, you heel the bag out on the lawn, and it takes you 5 hours to plant the couple of hundred, and you have them left sitting on the lawn in the wind, and those roots will dry out. And that's really important. Just feed, take them out of the bag as you're going along. Just have a small few and keep it's a basic tip, but it's actually
It's a
really
basic
critical.
tip, but yeah, we would get it. We would get asked it all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is critical. Something that I also use anytime I'm planting is I use mycorrhizal fungi, especially on bare root. I always use it, and I have for the last 15 years seen the results of it. So that's something that I always recommend. And then obviously
Great.
coming into next spring, that watering piece is really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
You're not hard to find, but maybe tell people where they can find you as we start to close off. We'll put the
Okay.
links in the show notes and all that sort of thing as well, so that people can find you there. But you're, as I say, you're not hard to find
Not
anyway.
hard to find. Thank you. Yeah. So online we'd be futureforest.ie.
Yeah,
And look, there's a lot there on the website. But look, the amount of people who phone us or email us looking for advice, and we're very, very happy to advise and help people out with choosing what they want.
yeah,
And also, if you're anywhere nearby or you're planning a trip, we're obviously in Kelkil there, down in West Cork, yeah, near Bantry.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Matty, it's been a few years since we chatted on the podcast. We have talked elsewhere, but yeah, it's great to have you back on. Great to hear how things have changed and evolved over the last few years. Great to hear that things are still going really well for you guys down there. As I said at the start, the advice and the selection is second to none. So that's really worth checking out. And Matty, thank you very much for coming on Master My Garden podcast.
A pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
So that's been this week's episode. A huge thanks to Matty for coming on. Yeah, a few years since we chatted, but a lot of the sound advice is still the same. From, as I said at the start, from Future Forest perspective, you will get really good advice in relation to each and every plant down there. And when it comes to things like choosing something size wise, what you can expect for that tree over time, the advice is yeah, top notch down there. So really worth checking out. Couple of good episodes as we start to close off for Christmas coming up over the next week or two. And yeah, this week's one is hugely important time. Bareroot season is right smack bang up and running now. And it's a great time, as we've mentioned several times, for hedges, trees, fruit bushes, roses, all that sort of thing. So yeah, get out there and get planting. And that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening. And until the next time, happy gardening.